Childhood is a time where we are blissfully unaware of the media we are consuming and the quality of it. We consume things like movies, shows, and video games, thinking that they are the best thing of all time, no matter what. But looking back at some of these things that I loved as a kid, I realized that they aren't as good as I remember them being. And one of the genres of games that I played most growing up was licensed video games. The main reason being that they were based off shows or movies that I loved, like SpongeBob, Cars, Looney Tunes, and many others. But the second reason is that they were dirt cheap. And let me tell you, these games varied in quality. Some were absolutely horrible, and some were really well received. And it got me thinking about the ones I played when I was younger. So today, I'm here to look back at some of the licensed games I played growing up, and seeing how well they held up, or how well they, didn't. And even though the games I'm going to talk about today aren't what I'd consider amazing, or even good for that matter, I found myself replaying these and still really enjoying a few of them somehow. But enough chit chat, let's kick off the video starting with...
Hey man, it's Freak Bob.
I don't even have to start this section off with going into the history of SpongeBob. Everyone knows who he is, but something special about this game in particular is that it was actually the first 3D SpongeBob game made for consoles, and only the second one to be on consoles, the first one being Super Sponge, which was released on the PS1. That game was developed by a company called Climax Development, while Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was developed by a different company, that being Big Sky Interactive, which one of the only other notable games that they made was Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. So, not a great track record. But upon starting the game, your main menu, so to speak, is actually inside of the Krusty Krab, which I thought was a pretty cool thing to do instead of just having your average main menu. The game starts off with the basic enough premise. SpongeBob wakes up and decides to play fetch with Gary. When Gary brings back a chest that belongs to the Flying Dutchman, SpongeBob ends up opening it, which summons the Flying Dutchman. And something I find interesting is that SpongeBob just straight up snitches on Gary, which leads to the Flying Dutchman deciding to take Gary instead of SpongeBob.
Well, I ain't never been out to sea with a talking cheese block before, but rules is rules, so I gotta take you with me. Are you ready?
Hold on there, Mr. Dutchman, sir. Technically speaking, it was not me who found you. Gary's the one who dug you up.
Ooh, that's a relief. This little varmint looks like he can do 10 times the work, if he can survive my hypnotic spell.
And, that's basically it for the story. It's just SpongeBob trying to find out a way to defeat the Flying Dutchman, and along the way he just decides to kidnap Gary along with some of SpongeBob's other friends. After this cutscene though is when we get into the gameplay, and it's, interesting to say the least. First off, it is a platformer, but the way you actually progress through the game is weird in my opinion. The main collectible in this game is these letter tiles which spell SpongeBob, and you need to do certain objectives in order to unlock a minigame to be able to find the Dutchman's treasure. This is a weird way to progress through this game, but the strangest part is when you collect all of these tiles, SpongeBob starts to do this weird spinning animation that goes on for a while. But you are then teleported inside of SpongeBob's mind? The objective is to just solve this puzzle while there's a bunch of random shit going on around you with this confusing music playing, and I don't know, I just felt like I was in some sort of fever dream while playing these sections. And the questionable animation of these characters during this section, and just throughout the entire game, doesn't help with this feeling of it just being a complete fever dream. The gameplay of each world is your average platforming fare though. Collect coins, do certain objectives, and just explore each level. For this first level though, my favorite objective was definitely the one where you have to race Squidward to the Krusty Krab. And the fact that he does not give a fuck about racing you and just walks as slow as possible was something I thought was actually really funny. Once we get to the Krusty Krab, we get a bus ticket for the downtown area from Mr. Krabs, which these bus tickets are the primary way of unlocking each world. If you don't got the bus ticket for a certain world, you just can't visit it at all. But the downtown area overall is just kind of alright. I actually like the dark lighting that this area has. I think it looks pretty cool, but the construction area is meh, and I kind of hate the area with the apartments. For some reason, the game changes to this 2.5D type of perspective, and it makes platforming up and getting down safely a pain to deal with. The main objective of the downtown area is to deliver Krabby Patties to guests that want them, and Mr. Krabs makes you deliver them to the customers. This objective overall is kind of just okay. It gets pretty repetitive after a while, but I do like how it doesn't give you an arrow telling you where to go or make it super obvious. It just tells you which house number and the street the delivery is on, which makes you look at the street signs and the house numbers. Speaking of Mr. Krabs, something I noticed that this game actually does better than something like Battle for Bikini Bottom is that the entire voice cast reprises their original roles. Even Clancy Brown, who voices Mr. Krabs, is actually in this game. Unlike Battle for Bikini Bottom and even Rehydrated.
Phew! You had me worried there for a bit, boy. Worried for me money, of course.
Never mind that. I'm going downtown to set things up. You take this bus ticket and meet me there as soon as you can.
It took me a bit to notice that it's actually Clancy Brown, but when I did, I thought the detail was worth bringing up, and since I'm talking about the voices, since the whole cast is here, it feels exactly like an episode of the show. And honestly, this might just be the best aspect of the game in my eyes. After dealing with the downtown section of the game, we move on to Sandy's Tree Dome. And I hate to say this, but it's kind of mid. Basically, the main objective of this one is to take a beehive that SpongeBob mistakes for an acorn to Sandy's Tree Dome. And after getting the beehive, Sandy lets the bees out, and it's our job to get them back. And that's it for this one. It's not great. One thing I did like about it though is being able to explore the top part of Sandy's Tree Dome, which is pretty cool. But that's about all the compliments I can give. The main gameplay of this section is capturing the bees with the jellyfishing costume, and the costume system is one I find to be kind of cool in theory. Each of the costumes available, and the ones you will unlock later, just add 1 or 2 new moves to SpongeBob's available ones. I just kind of hate how the abilities are tied to its own costume, and if you want to change the abilities / costumes, you need to run to the nearest costume tent. It gets repetitive after a while. In terms of abilities for each costume, there are 4 costumes in the game. Those being the jellyfishing gear, which lets you catch jellyfish and latch onto hooks. The reef blower, which lets you blow objects away from SpongeBob. The Mermaid Man costume, which lets you throw water balls and lift heavy objects. And the normal outfit, which doesn't have anything unique about it. Something that is cool about these costumes is that each costume has its own music theme assigned to them. The actual levels themselves don't have musics, but the costumes do. And while I like the concept because my favorite song of the soundtrack comes from one of these costumes, the jellyfishing gear. The thing that sucks about these is that if you do literally anything in the game, the music restarts from the beginning. You interact with an NPC, the music resets.
If only I had something yummy to eat.
You collect a letter needed for progression, the music resets. And probably the worst of them all being if you pause the game, it resets the music. It turns some pretty enjoyable tracks into some annoying ones that you end up dreading having to do anything in the game because it'll just reset on you. And it's honestly one of the worst parts of the game. Honestly, I don't really have too much more to add about this game, and Sandy's Tree Dome is about as far as I got into the game. So I'm going to name all the stuff I don't like about this game. Note, I have finished the game before, but I am not finishing this game again for this fucking video, dude. The combat is too deep for a SpongeBob game. Psych, the combat sucks. Unless you're in the karate outfit, which isn't a permanent costume, the game's combat literally just makes you push one button to do an attack, which stops you dead in your tracks and kills the flow of the gameplay. I know it's a SpongeBob platformer, and the first 3D one at that, but at least something like BFBB has more attack options, and even just one more way to attack the enemies would have been appreciated. The walking speed is just slow overall, and it feels like I'm slipping on ice whenever I walk. I hate it. I really don't like how you can't move the camera up or down. It makes platforming a lot more difficult than it should be, which a lot of platformers have an issue similar to this, but I kind of expected them to get this down by the PS2/GameCube generation. Sometimes the way to get the bus tickets needed to progress the game are strange. For instance, after completing Sandy's Tree Dome, I couldn't progress anymore, so I thought maybe I missed something in downtown Bikini Bottom, so I backtracked. and I didn't find anything. So I spent a good couple of minutes just searching around the Krusty Krab and Sandy's Tree Dome. And it turns out the next ticket I needed to get the jellyfish fields was attached to some random jellyfish near some random building by SpongeBob's house. There was no hint that it might be here or line of dialogue suggesting it might be in Bikini Bottom. The game just expected me to know it was in that specific spot, and I wasted a solid 20 minutes just looking for it. Finally, the gameplay loop of collecting letters by doing boring objectives in each world just kind of sucks. It loses its charm by the second, maybe third world, and even though it's a pretty short game, it feels pretty long, and to be honest, it's a game you could skip out and miss absolutely nothing. There are infinitely better SpongeBob games out there that I would actually recommend, so go play those, they're pretty fun. For this video, I'm going to be using the scale of greatness that I created to show how these licensed games rank against each other, ranging from never touch and burn it as soon as possible to a surprisingly good licensed game that you should try out. And to be honest, this would probably go right in the middle. It's not the worst game of all time, but it's not good either, unfortunately. Just play Battle for Bikini Bottom if you want a good SpongeBob game.
We're the rats.
The second game we're covering is Ratatouille, released on the Nintendo GameCube, and almost every console that was out at the time. But the GameCube version was released on June 26, 2007, and I was surprised to find out that it was developed by Heavy Iron Studios. You know, the Heavy Iron Studios that made both SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom and the SpongeBob movie game, which are some of my favorite licensed games ever. So going into this game, I was pretty optimistic, and it was published by THQ, which I mean isn't a surprise. It seems like they published almost every licensed game from this era. But upon starting the game, we soon find out that this game doesn't try to do its own story or something different with the Ratatouille characters. For the most part, it's an adaptation of the movie, and honestly, I don't really mind that. The first area we get to explore, like the movie, is the grandma's house, and although the stage serves as the tutorial area, I actually found it to be pretty enjoyable. Just looking around, I was surprised by how good the game looks. Just looking at the sunset was nice, and I was kind of shocked to find out that this came out on the GameCube. But the gameplay was your standard platforming stuff. Run, jump, and collect stuff. But where the game stands out is the fact that you're a rat. You have to think like a rat, explore like a rat, and you can even run into objects and trip over ledges if you're not careful while sprinting, just like a rat. And I think it's a pretty cool way to make this game different from other platformers, even if it's just little things like this. The actual environments are also pretty cool. Since you're just a rat, it makes things that are normal to us actually challenges to navigate. Honestly though, since this first stage is just the tutorial stage, there isn't much I can say about it that's super interesting. You get to platform around the grandma's house and her attic while collecting items and learning about the game's mechanics from Emil. Emil? I have no idea how the fuck you say it. The craziest thing about this level is the fact that you get to use a spoon as a weapon, and you just straight up end up killing baby chicks.
Little help, dear?
I was honestly pretty surprised to see something like this in my rat game. After killing a few baby chicks and getting to the end of the level, the grandma ends up spotting us while trying to grab Gusteau's book, which prompts her to try and shoot the rats. When we run away from her, it just takes us straight into the second level, which is rafting down a river to catch up with the rest of the rat clan. And it's a pretty fun but basic level overall, to be honest. I like the weather effects for this level, but other than that, its purpose is to just move us to the hub world of this game, which is the sewers. But while navigating the sewers, we end up in Gusteau's kitchen, which takes us to our first cooking minigame, which just involves pressing the correct button that corresponds with the right ingredient. And this isn't the only type of minigame we find throughout the game, but I found myself actually liking these minigames, even though they are pretty basic. I think they end up being kind of fun. After this first minigame, it takes us to first of some of the best content in this game, the sliding sections. Not only are they kind of challenging, which is surprising for this kind of game, but the amount of speed you can build up by holding forward on the stick is actually kind of crazy. Just look how fast Remy is going. Damn, he's as fast as Lightning McQueen. After reuniting with Emil and Remy's dad, we are able to move on to the next level, which is the streets of Paris. But right as you start the level, if you look to the right, you can find one of the optional platforming stages that are based around different kinds of food. Remy ends up falling asleep and the level is just a dream, which is pretty fun. These are probably my favorite sections of the game, just because it is nothing but straight platforming. No need to worry about where to go next or doing puzzles, just platforming from the beginning to the end. Which, I mean, they're very simple, but an enjoyable section overall. And the reward for completing these sections are Gusto points, which can be used to unlock extras in Gusto's shop, such as new game modes, concept art, and cheats. The cheats are pretty basic for the most part, just having stuff like early unlockables, but this game very well might have one of the best cheat codes of all time. That being the fart cheat code. You get this cheat by typing in the secret code, "I like onions," and every time you jump it adds a fart sound effect. Best game ever, 10 out of 10. You know what? Screw it, 11 out of 10. Actually, 20 out of 10. One thing that kind of freaked me out when I'd played this game as a kid is the death screens. All of them show nothing but darkness around Remy, and there are a lot of different animations that happen during them. Like Remy presumably gets killed by a dog, him just straight up passing out after getting caught by a mousetrap, and him getting caught in... oh no. But now I look at these and think it's pretty cool that the developers went the extra mile to create unique death animations depending on the situation. So good job, developers of a nearly 20-year-old game. The next stage's goal is to get the rat colony into Gusto's kitchen. Even though the process of getting through the level is nothing special, it's overall a solid enough time. Once we reach the end though, we get to do more mini games. And I actually don't hate doing minigames in these types of licensed games, but I am curious as to why so many of them at the time had a lot of minigames in them. The first of these minigames has you control a different rat, and you just need to rewire this electrical box by pressing the buttons correctly. And this minigame isn't difficult at all, but playing this game on my totally legit GameCube with my totally legit controller did make me mess up a few of the button inputs, which led to the rat getting shocked. If you end up playing this game how I did, then be wary of your inputs. The second minigame during this section has you control a rat named Git, which I do not remember from the movie, if I'm being honest, but the goal of this is to pull a rope and make a bucket fall over, and to be honest, this minigame just reminds me of Yakuza Golf. The last minigame of this section has you escort rats from the kitchen back to the hideout, while avoiding a dog, and you probably guessed it by now, but you do this by pressing the corresponding button, and once it's completed, Linguini notices the rats coming out of the kitchen, which leads to a chase section with Remy running from Linguini. This level just reminds me of the chase levels from Crash Bandicoot, which means the section is pretty solid overall. The next cutscene has Linguini asking Remy for help cooking since he's not good at it. Remy says okay, and that stage is done. The next and final stage that I played for this video is Gusto's kitchen. The main goal of this one is to find the rats that are hiding around the area and help them get into the food cooler to steal food. Each of the rats in this stage has their own goal they need us to do, and it involves running around the kitchen. But once we progress further into the level, we actually get to control Linguini, and we have multiple tasks that we need to get done before the timer runs out, such as making a salad by choosing the correct ingredients and rejecting the wrong ones, cutting potatoes, which I found pretty fun just trying to do as fast as possible, and making a cake by just timing button presses correctly. There are a few more of these that I didn't get to try for the video, but these sections are surprisingly fun. Running around and trying to finish these as soon as possible never really got boring to me at any point. The music that plays during this section is pretty good also. The soundtrack of this game overall was a big surprise to me. It's not the best soundtrack of all time or something I'm going to be putting in my playlist, but a lot of the music is the same type of stuff you'd expect from the movie. Calming Paris type music, and none of the tracks really stood out to me as horrible or anything, so good job, game. I think the way the game turns something as ordinary as a kitchen into a pretty fun place to run around and platform is the biggest strength of this game. And having to be cautious around the humans to make sure you don't get caught is another fun mechanic that I think is just kind of cool. I think these are a few of the reasons that this game stands out as unique when compared to other platformers that came out around this time. And although this isn't the best platformer of all time or anything, it is one that I found pretty enjoyable, and honestly I would recommend it to anyone who wants a short but enjoyable licensed platformer. In terms of the scale of greatness, I would definitely put this game above Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. I don't have nearly as much complaints as I do with that game, and as of right now, it stands at the top of the scale. But will our next game surpass the Rat game, or will it be worse than it? Stick around to find out right now. Why do I own this game physically? I haven't seen Shrek 2 in a bit, but from what I can remember, the game follows the plot of the movie, with a few liberties taken here and there in order to get some actual gameplay out of it. And speaking of gameplay, the first level of the game has us running around Shrek's swamp. As Shrek, Fiona, Gingy, and Donkey. They each have their own special abilities that makes them kind of stand out from each other. Shrek can pick up heavy objects while nobody else can. Fiona can slow down time like she has Dio's stand from JoJo's. Donkey can kick locks to break them and slam downwards. And Gingy can throw his candy cane and cookies to lure enemies, and he can jump high. These abilities are used to complete objectives around the level, and they range from kind of okay to the most boring thing I have ever played. For example, just in the first stage, you have such exciting objectives as collect eyeballs by hitting snails, throw the chickens into the cauldron, and collect the fairies. These are a few of the objectives in the first stage, and throughout the game, I never found myself having a lot of fun. At least with the other two games, there were moments that I was having genuine fun with, and I think that has to do with one of the biggest gimmicks of this game. While the other two games I've discussed are platformers with a focus on single player, this game can actually be played with up to 4 players, each player controlling one of the 4 characters, and a game designed around having 4 players at a time that need to work together to get through each level is more likely to be fun with friends. And having to play this game by myself is kind of annoying. Whether that's having to swap characters constantly to get basic things done, or trying to work together with an AI that has zero clue what it's doing, it just gets real repetitive really fast. And I barely have any friends as it is, so I'm not gonna go ask them, hey, do you want to play Shrek 2 on the GameCube with me? That'll honestly probably just get them to run away from me. I'm gonna blitz through the main objectives of this first stage because they aren't anything special, to be honest. The first objective is to collect eyeballs from snails. Then you have a fight with Robin Hood and his men. You just punch them a few times and that's it. Then you collect some fairies from the leprechaun. Then you rotate back to Shrek's house and find that Little Red Riding Hood is there for some reason. And you need to collect the chickens she lost and toss them into the pot. And we're gonna pause right here because there's something that's special about this game. During my playthrough, I had done the objectives that I just listed off, and that's cool, but I wanted to be done for the day. I could only handle so much of this game after all. But when I hit save and quit, I expected to be able to pick the game up back tomorrow and just pick up right where I left off. But guess what? The game made me restart the whole level. The actual in-game checklist for these objectives had been checked off, so it kind of saved my progress, but it made me restart the whole level. So unless you finish these levels in one sitting, or you use save states on your totally legit GameCube that isn't an emulator, you have to restart the level, losing 20 to 40 minutes of progress. What the fuck? Alright. After I caught back up to my previous progress, we get to the final goal of the level, and I will say that overall the game is kind of meh, but at the end of each level there is a special minigame focusing on one of the playable characters that I kind of enjoy. It's called Hero Time! And in the first level you play as Fiona, and we need to get blackbirds to make a blackbird pie for this guy. And there's only one way to do it, I guess, and that is by having Fiona sing to the birds just like in the movie. And it barely lasts a minute, but I don't hate it. They even explode at the end just like the movie. Wow. And that's it for the first level. Overall, a pretty boring level to be honest, but the second level starts off with the witch turning the horses on Shrek's carriage into mice. And the main objective of the level is to guide the mice to the Wicked Witch's house to turn them back into horses. Something that is kind of cool about this game is that occasionally one of the characters will be swapped out for a new character. In this one, we get to play as Red Riding Hood instead of Gingy. Her main ability is just being able to throw apples to disable traps, which, thinking about it now, isn't really fun or exciting, but whatever. This stage has much less to talk about since the level is basically just focused on guiding the mice, and there are things that happen along the way such as getting into a few fights and dealing with the hazards for the mice. But overall it feels a lot more focused, so honestly there isn't much to complain about. It's just kind of okay. The stage is also way shorter than the previous, so that probably helps it not be as boring as it. Once we reach the witch's house, Fiona gets into the carriage that Dragon brought to the house, and the witch takes control of it while Fiona is in it. And that takes us into the second hero time. With this one though, we get to play as Donkey while riding Dragon. And it's very simple. The goal is to just follow the carriage while avoiding obstacles. But this one lasts a surprisingly long time, and the craziest thing about this hero time is that if you get hit even once, you have to restart the entire thing. I only failed it once, but I was shocked out to find out that a game meant for kids would have something as punishing as this. I thought the game would let you tank at least 2 hits before restarting, but no. And to be honest, this one might just be the best hero time in the game. We managed to save Fiona just in time before she falls off a cliff and dies, which then takes us to the third and final level for this video, because I can only take so much Shrek 2, and that is Far, Far Away. This level is a bit weird. Far, Far Away is more of an open area compared to the first level, and the objectives are scattered all around. They are all presented by Fiona's dad, and you don't have to do every objective to finish this level. The game doesn't straight up tell you how many you need to do to move on to the next level, but I did 4 of these, and it let me move on to the next stage. The first objective is to find Humpty Dumpty's eggshell pieces that got lost after he got in a fight, and you're constantly getting jumped during this section. So you need to run or fight your way through these guys and collect the eggshells. The next objective is to get rid of the Pied Piper and his mice. And although this one doesn't last very long, I thought having to kill 175 of his mice was kind of extreme. But at least we get to one-shot the Pied Piper himself. I can't tell if this next one was the best or worst objective of this stage because how easy it was. You just need to pick up 18 of these guys and throw them into this cage, but the whole time they are fighting amongst themselves, so it's not even slightly dangerous. For the final objective, we need to round up chickens that fell from a fast food truck, and hey, wait a minute, haven't we seen this before? Yeah, for the final goal of this video, it's just a complete repeat of the one from the first stage. And guess what? It's equally as boring. After this though, I decided I had enough of this level and I decided I was done. The final thing I decided to do for this part of the video was a boss fight against Puss in Boots. I was hoping we would go out on a banger, but this might just be the worst part of the game yet. The entire fight is just a rhythm game. Whether you're thinking Guitar Hero, Rock Band, Friday Night Funkin', or even SpongeBob SquarePants Lights Camera Pants for that matter. This fight is like those games, but worse. The controls are meh, and the gameplay is just pushing buttons, and look how slowly you chip away at this cat's health. It's torture. And for some reason the devs thought it was a good idea to have this fight go on for 5 whole minutes. By the end of it, I was just tired and had enough of this game. On the scale of greatness, this game is honestly probably the worst by far, and I'm putting it at the bottom of this scale. It's just straight up boring, and like I said before, it's probably more fun if you have friends to play this with, but I didn't, so it was not an enjoyable time. I'd recommend watching Shrek 2 on the Game Boy Advance over this game, to be honest.
It's time for an in-your-face disgrace!
Monster House is based off the movie of the same name, and this game was released on July 18th, 2006. Being developed by A2M and published by our good friends THQ, like the previous 2 games we've talked about, this one follows the story of the movie, but unlike the others, this game starts off in the middle of the story. The main characters, DJ, Chowder, and Jenny, are all in a cop car, and after failing to put the house to sleep, they are eaten and stuck inside of the house, where the game begins. The first cutscene inside the house shows all of our main characters getting separated, and after this cutscene is where the gameplay starts. And you might notice that unlike every other game we've discussed thus far, this game isn't a platformer. It's actually a third-person survival horror game, which during this era is shocking. It might not be true, but it definitely felt like during this era of licensed games, we would basically get platformers non-stop. So to see something like this is a nice change of pace. During this first section of gameplay though, we play as DJ, and the goal is simple: survive and try to take down the monster house.
Say that again?
As we are exploring the house, the main form of enemies in this game is actually the furniture around the house. There are things like chairs,
TVs, books, and windows that will alert the enemies of your location. And I'm surprised to say this, but I really like the design of the enemies in this game. It's pretty short, so although it repeats the enemies quite a bit, they never overstay their welcome. Since this is the first section of the game though, not much interesting really happens at all. You fight a couple enemies, open a few doors, and explore the house. After DJ's section, we swap over to playing as Jenny for a bit. As her main form of shooting the enemies, we get to use a water gun. But the thing I like about this is that each character has their own unique shooting pattern. DJ starts off with a single shotgun, Jenny gets a burst shot, and Chowder gets a shotgun. Jenny's section lasts like a minute, so nothing really happens sadly, but the third and final character we get to play as is Chowder. And like I said, he has his shotgun shot, and his special attack is being able to shoot balloons that act like grenades. And I don't know if I just don't understand how to use them, but I always miss these and it sucks. This section is short, but it's not as short as Jenny's section, so that's good. After Chowder nearly gets kidnapped again, we manage to escape and we swap back over to DJ. A little bit into playing as DJ, we actually get the first upgrade to his water gun. It increases his rate of fire and makes it a full auto gun. This is a licensed game after all, so I went into it with some low expectations. So seeing that you can actually earn some form of upgrades for your weapons was a welcome addition. I thought we'd be stuck using the same shitty weapon in the entire game, to be honest. But after getting this upgrade, the next room gives us our first puzzle of the game. And although it's a very simple puzzle, just shoot the piano and you get to leave, it was at this point of the game that I couldn't stop thinking to myself, this gameplay loop kind of feels familiar. You explore a big house, find keys to get into rooms that are locked, you try to survive enemies that are attacking you while having to deal with some slow moving controls, and you solve puzzles around the house trying to escape. This is just Resident Evil for babies. And that's not a complaint, by the way. Although I haven't talked much about what happens in the game up to this point, I actually found myself having a lot of fun with it. The atmosphere is eerie, and the music, although kinda simple, is surprisingly good for a game like this, to be honest. After exploring a bit more, we find the cop car from the start of the game, and we find a walkie-talkie. And on the other end of it is Skull, the guy in the pizza shop playing the arcade game from the movie, who eats Chowder's chocolate. Fucking asshole. And like the movie, he just tells DJ that in order to defeat the house, they need to strike its heart. And from here on out, we can actually use the walkie-talkie to call Skull. From what I can tell, it doesn't really help much. I expected him to give us some helpful tips or something like that, but he kind of just says random quips. We get to explore the basement of the house, which is pretty cool, but fast forward a bit and we enter this room where everything is flipped sideways. I just felt like mentioning this because there's no explanation as to why this happens. No one comments on it either, it's just kind of there. But it's cool to see in a game like this. We end up finding Jenny in this room, and since DJ is weak as shit and can't open this grate, I couldn't do it either, to be honest. Jenny ends up not meeting up with DJ and instead tries to find another way around. A few minutes into playing as her though, we come across the first boss fight. I was not expecting this game to have like actual boss fights in it, but I will take it. And I know I've said this a lot during this video, but I was genuinely surprised at how this boss was surprisingly good. It has actual attack patterns and wind-up animations on its attacks, and cycles between a few different attacks, which kept me on my toes the entire fight. And as you can see, I was getting my ass kicked during this boss, but I did manage to clutch it up thankfully, and did not have to restart the fight from the beginning. In terms of the main game though, that's about all I played for this video that's even remotely worth mentioning. But while playing the main game, you can find these arcade tokens that are used for playing a side mode, which is pretty cool. That being Thou Art Dead, aka the game Skull is playing in the arcade before he steals Chowder's food. Fucking asshole. They even have his high score shown before starting the game, and although this game is essentially just Diet Castlevania, it's one I found to be really cool, and it made me wonder why more movie games don't adapt their in-movie games into actual games, even if they're small extras like this, because this is pretty cool. So, where does this final game rank on the scale of greatness, you may be wondering? Well, if I'm gonna be honest, and I'm kinda surprised to say this, but I think Monster House on the Nintendo GameCube deserves the top spot. Although I probably have the least to say about this game compared to the others, it's definitely the one I had the best time with.
and it gets a few bonus points for being something other than a platformer. This may not be the case, but it certainly felt like every licensed game at this point was a platformer, and it's cool to see something different. So, should you play these games? To be honest, if you know you enjoy these kind of games, I would recommend playing these two games and maybe skipping out on the other two. There are better games out there and certainly better licensed games, so just don't waste your time with something like SpongeBob Revenge of the Flying Dutchman and play something like Battle for Bikini Bottom instead. I'd like to do another video like this in the future, so if you have any licensed games from around this era you'd like me to check out, good or bad, drop them in the comments below. And I'll hopefully be back soon. See ya in the next one.